Hi everyone, and welcome back to On the Sofa with Sophia. Our special guest today is going to be Lynda Brown with KidsEat. She's the founder of that organization. I am looking forward to our opportunity to find out about Lynda, how she got started, and what's going on with her, and about this wonderful, fabulous organization that we have in the South Valley area.
I'm looking forward to talking with you, Sophia. It's going to be great.
This is going to be awesome. So we are filmed at Flash TV Studios out of Sandy, Utah, and our director is Deborah Dean, and I'm your hostess, Sophia Hawes-Tingey. So let's get into a deep dive about what's been going on this week as far as news, events, and politics. So I had my eye very recently, earlier in the week, when I saw there was a defense spending bill that had to be voted on, but there was a small problem with that bill. And the problem was that there was an amendment made to the bill that would allow any defense contractor to opt into discrimination because of their personal religious beliefs.
Yeah.
I believe, am I correct, was this the Sessions amendment? This was Senator Sessions? I can't remember who was the author.
I think so.
Of the amendment. He's also one of the people that they're looking at for, I think, Secretary of, what part of the cabinet.
Yeah, one of the cabinet posts that's like, oh my gosh.
So there's but the good news is I saw something come across my feed that said that amendment was actually removed. So I feel, whew, that's a huge lift off my burden. I can't help but feeling it's only because the whole defense bill would have been vetoed by current sitting president, so I'm still a little bit hesitant about our defense appropriations bills coming up in the next few years. We've got some work to do, we've got some advocacy to do to make sure we've got people that will talk to people who will talk the presidential staff and help them understand why a religion is not an excuse for discrimination at all. So obviously we're also on pins and needles about all these potential appointments to the cabinet.
It's frightening.
It is. We have, they're saying it's going to be the most well-paid staff.
It's the wealthiest cabinet that has ever been. I was listening to that on NPR on my way here. So the wealthiest cabinet that has ever been appointed, and most of them have ties to Wall Street.
So when we have a lot of issues, when we're talking about that, 99% of the wealth is shared, or 90% of the wealth is shared among 1% of the population.
And they'll all be back.
So we don't have people that are inherently motivated to help us address those issues. So that's the first issue. Then we're also looking at the issue that a number of these people are involved with what's called the Family Research Council as well. The Family Research Council is they don't want to say they're anti-LGBT, but they don't want to acknowledge that, a person's sexual orientation or a person's gender identity are things that are okay to live with. They honestly want to say there's a limited set of people that you're allowed to love. There's a certain limited set of the kind of person that you can be. So some of us in the LGBT community, when we have a broader definition of what a family means, that a family is actually made of love. It's where you find safety and security and comfort. And these narrower definitions tend to make a lot of those welcoming places not an option and force people into unloving relationships, which in turn creates a bad, toxic environment for a lot of children that are growing up, especially if they are looking for support and trying to come to conditions with their gender identity and their sexual orientation. So I have to tell you something. When I look at what's been going on with the election, I was following the polls like every day. I was going to 538 and seeing what the numbers were. I'm a computer scientist, right? I'm a software engineer. I did my master's degree on a thesis in data mining, which actually uses statistical sampling and statistical analysis.
I don't think I knew all that.
So
that's
a lot of people don't know that. I'm afraid of boring them half to death.
That's very impressive.
So when I'm looking at, was looking at all the polls, and the polls, you know, for the most part, were leaning toward one candidate pre-election, you know, all practically to the day of, and then post-election, when they were asking people at exit polls, like after they voted, who did you vote for? And the exit polls reflected the prior polls, and we have as many polls as we're having to actually see the counts that came out of the individual counties not reflect either the pre-polls or the exit polls. It basically says we've got a tremendous statistical anomaly here. And there's several things that could cause that anomaly. I mean, the biggest thing that could cause that anomaly is essentially there's a piece of data that wasn't taken into account. Some piece of information that wasn't taken into account when those polls were conducted. Now, some people would actually want to tell you that, well, the reason those numbers were off is because people were scared to say they were voting for Donald Trump. Well, in order for that large of a shift in the polls would actually mean that people are doing things that they wouldn't normally psychologically do, right? That you would actually have a collusion of people for them to agree, or some paranormal effect happen where they all had the same thought consistently, so that they would have all had to collude and say, we're just going to lie and we're not going to tell the truth about who we voted for. Another possibility of that in the sampling of the data could have been what their definition of the likely voter was. You know, if we don't know if we're not targeting people that are actually going to vote, then our definition of likely voter needs to change. And in order for us to be able to do that, to be able to have some sense of confidence in our electoral process, we need to audit the data. We've got to look at the data, do some more statistical sampling of the actual results, you know, and cross-verify them. And the third possibility is that, no, our likely voter data was correct, but something fraudulent happened, which would also come out in an audit of the data. And the interesting part is the three states that were considered the most critical, the margin was like less than 1% in all three states. And we had counties that reported that had over 100% turnout, multiple counties in the same district.
Wasn't that fascinating?
Over 100%. So I'm not exactly sure how that works. So I am all on board with, you know, we need to audit this data. We need to find out what it is that we didn't know about the elections when we were talking about people. Where is the piece of data that's missing? Is it fraud? Is it we don't know what the likely voter is, and we need to figure a different way? Was there a bias in the sample, and why were everybody using the same bias and not coming up with that answer? So yesterday was World AIDS Awareness Day. So AIDS is not cured. In fact, AIDS, when it was first first coming out in the U.S., there were about 8 known cases in about 1979, I believe the year it was. I've been reading this book, How to Survive the Plague, which just came out this year. But doctors were slow to move on that information. And in fact, because of the stigmatization that was already being leveraged against gay people, this rapidly became the gay cancer, as they referred to it, which added more stigmatization to a number of people. Before all was said and done, and things still aren't really said and done, but to date, over 600,000 people in the U.S. alone have lost their lives because of complications due to AIDS. And that's millions of people worldwide. A lot of people have physical scars from the AIDS. Their level of health is greatly diminished. They were able to basically come up with medication that helped them manage and help them live with AIDS. but they don't live an optimal life. And there's a lot of people here in Salt Lake City area that have AIDS as well. Then you have a lot of emotional scars. You have a lot of people who lost loved ones. You know, when it was a sin to love the person that you were with, that the law considered it a sin, and then to watch them die in front of you. And so these people are still, you know, suffering and having to have extra medication. They're having to be on medication that manages and helps keep them living long enough, while with the emotional scars of having lost friends and loved ones over the years. And there is a kind of a feeling among this group, as I read this information, that they had to fight just for recognition that AIDS was a real problem, to, you know, and then they see the new generation after they've had all these medications come in, who said we're able to go and fight for marriage equality and are fighting for equal rights and equal protection. And these people feel like they've been left behind, that AIDS has been, it's like, okay, we've solved that problem, put it in the closet. The problem is AIDS hasn't been solved. There are still some forms and variants of AIDS which don't have a managing medication for it. They don't have a cure for it. So again, it's just, think about these people today, this week, that have been living with this problem. You know, they're still in our lives. We all know them. And we want to show them love. Right. So I'm the vice chair of the Community Council of Midvale, and recently we thought we were going to do a nice thing for the homeless shelter, the family overflow homeless shelter in Midvale. And we said, okay, we want to donate $500 to the homeless shelter so that they can have holiday food for the holiday. And I'm one of those people that with the left hand doesn't want to know what the right hand is doing. I want to have areas of my life that aren't politicized. The homeless shelter responded and said, that's a great idea. Let's do a media event out of it when you give us the money. So I had to, like, you know, swallow that personally, you know, because like, okay, well, I gotta have
you
to
wanted
do
to be anonymous, and now you're going to be on the air.
Now we're going to be on the air.
Thing, okay.
But we're going to have that media event. It's going to be this Monday at 4 o'clock at the Road Home in Midvale. And we're encouraging anybody that's in Midvale or anybody that wants to support the homeless to be there to help us out with that. And just want to let everybody know, next week we're not going to be able to broadcast out of the studio because I'm going to Washington, D.C. for the LGBT Leadership Conference. So and there's going to be a lot of people there that are elected officials, as well as people who are going to be running for office, like myself, and other leaders in the community, and some people who will become elected officials in the years. So it's a good place to get together, work with other people to see how they're dealing with issues in our communities, and you know, make those connections. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of the people that I already know that I haven't seen in a while.
You need to take that and make your Friday event.
Well, I'm going to take my camera with me, and I'm going to see if there's anybody that actually wants to just have a quick interview while we're there. Otherwise, I'll be reporting from there as soon as I get an opportunity.
Good.
So we're going to take a quick break.
Great.
And when we get back, we're going to have our conversation with Lynda Brown, and we're going to talk about KidsEat.